this little booklet here from Sydney.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. You know, I remember in 1962 when we were communicating with those people over there.
Right.
And
I sent them the first tape in 1961.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was never going to get a reply, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe it got lost in the mail, you know, which could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get a letter, you know. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I probably have it written down someplace in some of my old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I get a letter, and he said, sorry to be, you know, so long in answering,
Mm-hmm.
but we've been having a very rough time trying to get going again, you know, get started. See, I talked to him before that, and they got a couple of groups started, and I said, I'll send you down a tape with some of the people, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I sent down the tape with little excerpts from, who the hell was that?
Was that a Thursday night down at Yakin Gower?
No, that was the original meeting place over in at Rhodes and North Park, the church.
Oh yeah.
It was a Unity church at that time. It's now Unitarian. And so
Is that one now?
we didn't get to Yakin Gower for a long time after that. It was quite a while.
Was that in 61?
That was 61. I sent the first tapes down. So I've been in touch with them before that. See?
Yeah.
I've been in touch with them probably the end of 60, the beginning of 61, by letter, you know, and they said they were having a hell of a time trying to get started, that they didn't like the name, you know, Narcotics Anonymous, and they were afraid that the cops were going to bother them. I told them the same thing. We'd still tell them, I think. I think we still tell them anyway. Go to your narcotic division if you have one. Go to the police department. Go to the sheriff. Go to the marshal and tell them what you're trying to tell. Hey, I'm clean. I'm not in any trouble. This is what we're trying to do. You know, don't go down and ask them because they'll say no.
Yeah.
Go down and tell them, you know. So anyway, they got one meeting underway, and they were having a hell of a time, you know. And I got a couple of letters. So then I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. It might be helpful. I had just gotten one of my old tape recorders, the old 7-inch reel, you know.
That's the one I got. That old Silvertone.
That was the one Silvertone. I just got that first.
I still got that.
And
I'm never
was
going to
made
give that
on
away.
that. So that was one. If you remember when you said, "Geez, I'd like to buy that," and I said, "I hate like hell to give it up." That was the reason. I hate to give it up.
Well, I'll never give it up.
Yeah, because it was the first one. So I got that, and I did.
That's a real keepsake, Jimmy.
Yeah, and it was something that I wasn't too familiar with. I didn't know anything about electronics. And there was so much noise. We didn't have good microphones, you know, the whole stuff. But we made some tapes, and then I took them here and went through them and took pieces out and put it on another. And that's when I went down and got another machine. I bought the old
Wallensack, yeah. And then you bought two of them.
So then I used that, and then later on I bought another Wallensack so I could match them up. And then I would take the Silvertone, and Silvertone wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Silvertone.
And
then I would run off what I wanted to on a new tape. So then that's when I started to make tapes. And later on I sent some of the same tapes out to some of the other prisons around the country here and up in Canada. Some of the first tapes that went up to Canada, in fact, were the same tapes. And I've still got some of them, the old boxes that went out and came back. And so when I sent that down, then I sent a letter with it, of course, and if possible, if anybody's got a tape recorder down there, and you get around to it, make a tape of whoever is there, you know, and
send it back.
And send it back to us, you know. And so they sent back the one I had sent down, I believe. I think they sent it back. And I told them to keep it if they wanted to, but they sent it back. And then a while later, I get the tape. If you remember right, if you happened to be at that meeting at the church, when I got it back, or maybe you were just starting at that time, when I got it back, I took it down, and we played it at the meeting.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, we played it at the meeting. It was kind of hard to understand because of their accents, too, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you remember, there's a little fighter on there that gave quite a good pitch. And I'm going to have to look that. I have that tape around here. I started looking for it, but I got a lot of stuff in boxes. And the way I've been feeling the last year and a half, I haven't felt really like getting into it.
Digging into it.
You know, I've neglected everything. My front yard looks like hell the last, well, since the middle of January, this has been going on. You know, I haven't had time to do anything. But then we kept in touch, and then they died out.
That must have been about the mid-60s or something, huh? 60.
They died out about a year after that.
Yeah.
And then I wrote and wrote and got no answer.
So it was mainly, wasn't it mainly nurses and doctors, medical
It was
people?
mainly all, like, nurses, doctors, dentists, any professional people. And the others were just lucky if you caught somebody who wasn't professional.
Yeah.
They were all in what they call the registry. They were all like, the registry there is like the AMA here.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were all in the registry. They were afraid of losing the registration, naturally.
Sure.
So that's what made it very difficult, because the other people were, most of these people were using probably morphine, Demerol, morphine, and so forth, the legit drugs, you know. And some of them were using heroin. It was not as widespread as you might think, you know, but they were using heroin. So you had a very limited number of people who were willing to admit that they had a problem and were afraid. And the others, you know, the pillheads, the average run-of-the-mill addict, he wasn't getting any help at all anywhere.
Yeah.
He didn't even recognize them.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And so they died out 3 or 4 times. In fact, this time it was starting in again, really. I can give you a whole story with evidence to show why these things happen. Just a few years back, the same thing again. They started a sort of revival, a renewed interest in NA. And then they did exactly what we talk about so often. They got away from the tradition. They started to use the NA name in other places. They started to finagle around with the program, and every time that we do those kind of things, we kill ourselves. We destroy ourselves. And this has happened. We've seen it here. We've seen other parts of this country. We saw it in Canada. We've seen it now in Australia. But this time it seems like they finally got their feet on the ground and are willing to live by the tradition as groups. Get together. Now they've got a couple of good years behind them now. They're beginning to really grow again, grow well. And I told them, these kids I was talking to, I said, I'm so interested all the time. I said, so please send me, sit down with the group or your region or your area, sit down and make a tape. Let us know what's going on. If you have any problems, if you want to talk about anything, tell us. If you've got any good news for us, tell us. If you've got anything you think would help us, let us know. And I said, and I'll get a couple of people around the table in my house here, and we'll answer the tape. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked to a couple of people. And maybe in about another week, see how I feel. Maybe about another week I'll get together, and we're going to make a tape to send down.
Oh, yeah.
And that way then they won't forget.
Yeah.
I get them going again like I usually do.
That's right.
See?
Yeah.
And I'll send them down a tape with a few pieces. I've got some stuff that I got on a videotape, and I can take the audio off the videotape and send it.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So, and that, part of that would be good. I had Bill, you know, from Cry, and I had a couple of guys from San Gabriel Valley, and one of them, 2 of them took their cakes tonight. We just had automatically. We were going to come over. They were going to go someplace. They run into some of the people who were coming here. They said, well, we said, come on over here. Come on with us. He said, well, be all right. I said, sure, be all right. Well, we've never been there, you know. So he went out and he bought a cake on the way over because he knew that both these guys had birthdays. One had his birthday that day, and one had it a couple of days earlier. So they gave him the cake right here in the house. So it was good.
Yeah, that was nice, yeah.
And we sat here for about 2 hours and made a tape. So I'll take some of that audio off and maybe send it down to Australia. That might be something that'll start another little exchange of programs.
Yeah.
And you know how I am right now. I've always been that way, you know. You and I are, in some ways, are very much alike. As you know, we've talked about it before.
Sure.
So we're both hardheads, you know.
That's right.
And we make up our mind there's a way we're going to do things, and we try our goddamnedest to make it work. You know?
That's right.
And then if we see there's something wrong, then we'll think it over. And then we'll change and we'll try something else. God damn it, you know. I remember years ago, I don't know whether I ever told you this or not, but years ago, when Les, you know, Les was...
Les Brown?
Yeah, Les came to me one day and he said, you know, I said, I like that kid. He said, a goddamn friend of yours, he said, but he can get me so goddamn mad. You know, I get, you know, he just had a mushy temper. He was pretty cool.
Yeah.
For me, I'd blow up, you know. And he'd blow up too at times, you know. And he said, you know, such a nice kid. He said, but God can? He's a hard-headed son of a bitch, isn't he? I said, yeah, he sure as hell is.
Yeah, that's right.
I said, he's just like I am. He said, yeah, he is. That's true. And he said, well, you get mad quicker than he does. I said, oh, yeah? I said, you don't know Gene, you know. I
You got to
said,
push the right button.
yeah. I said, you don't know Gene. I said, well, we go at it sometimes. I said, I want to tell you something about Gene. And I said, and I think it's true about me, too. I said, when I think something's right, I give it everything I got, and I'll stand up and I'll be counted, you know.
That's right.
And I said, but goddamn, if I find out I'm wrong, I'll take my 10th step, and I'll
Stand
admit
right
it.
up and,
And I'll admit it.
stand
you
right
know.
up and tell him you're
And
wrong.
I said, you'll find out that Gene's exactly the same way. If he feels that he's wrong in anything he said or done to you, he'll come over and he'll tell you,
That's
you know. And he said, that's good, you know.
Would I kick this thing off, Jimmy?
No, I think it.
Okay.
Just hit that second button from the far end. Hello? Okay, see if I can remember where we were. So anyway, it does look like we're really getting going now that we've got our region. We've had a couple of good get-togethers, social gatherings, you know. I think last year they had their first real good get-together at the conventions. And we have another one coming up. I think it's either next month, or this month, or September. Probably towards the end of this coming month. Or September, early September. So they seem to be doing well. They're beginning to get along a lot better with each other.
Yeah.
Because we've got the people that were trying to use the program now out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, that's what happens. But
Hey, Jimmy, you know what I'd like to do? Is I know we've talked about this a lot of times, but my memory's so bad, you know, about exactly what happened in the beginning when the program first was developed, you know, and who was involved and like where the meeting was. And,
yeah, well,
and,
that goes back to right to here at the house, you know.
yeah.
We had talked, different people had talked. And like I told you, it seemed like in the beginning, I knew something seemed to be missing with me. I was no great big into heavy drug addiction, you know, per se. But I was in such bad shape that I couldn't go no further, you know. Pills were enough, along with the booze and the pills and the other crap, was enough for me. I didn't need no heroin, you know. I was in such goddamn bad shape then. A shot of heroin would have killed me right then and there, you know. I could hardly work, you know. If I worked a couple hours a day, I was lucky. And but see, one of my biggest defects of character that I talk about once in a while is I'm so goddamn responsible. But this is one of the things that I have to be very careful about, being responsible.
Yeah, too responsible.
Overly responsible. And this has been a killer for me, you know. I could never say screw everything and walk off.
And you'd let it go, yeah.
So you're trying that control. And control will kill you.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I had gone as far as I could go, you know, and there was no place further I could go.
Yeah.
So when I came on the program, of course, it was AA. There was no NA.
Did you come in at the North Hollywood Club?
I went to North Hollywood in 1951, and I was in bad shape. You know? Some of these people couldn't understand.
What month was that?
That was 1950.
50.
Yeah.
What month?
February.
February.
1950. And in fact, it was Groundhog Day. And so I was so goddamn bad shape, you know. I couldn't absorb anything. I couldn't talk. I looked like hell, you know. I looked like death warmed over. And people used to look at me and walk away. You know, someone was look at me, they were afraid to talk to me because I was wild. You know?
Yeah.
And and then I was so almost totally deaf, you know. I couldn't hear. My hearing was very bad. And but I kept going back down there, you know. I kept trying to listen. So mostly I had to read, you know. My sponsor wouldn't loan me his book. It took me about 3.5 months until I had $350
To buy a book.
I could spend to buy a book.
Yeah.
I still got it. That's right over there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so then as I got a little bit better, you know, my head began to get a little unscrambled. I began to meet people. I didn't attach myself to too many people. I just couldn't seem to cotton to them too much, you know. Yeah, I understood what they were saying, and I could relate to what they were saying. But there still seemed to be something a little missing, you know. And all of a sudden I started to make a couple of friends, new friends, you know. And all of a sudden I found out about a year later, all these guys were addicts.
Interesting, huh?
Really funny, you know.
Yeah. Who was that, like Gil Von Henschel?
Pat Hand. This was before Gil even came around.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't around I think Gil came around in about 52. 52, I think Gil started.
Yeah, I think so.
He didn't have a year in when we started the habit-forming drugs group, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But he used to come downtown with us to the AA meetings down in Skid Row, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so Gil and his wife and Eddie and his
Eddie
wife.
Cochran?
Yeah, Eddie and his wife.
And Pat Hand?
And Pat Hand. And these people were always on my ass. Why don't you start something? Why don't you do something for the addicts, you know? Because I'd been in touch, I think in 1951 or 52, I think I got in touch with Danny Carlson, who formed the original kind of NA, not the kind as we know it. They didn't have steps like we've got today. They didn't have steps like we have, you know.
Who was that, Andy Carlson?
Danny Carlson.
Oh, Danny. Uh-huh.
So Danny was in Lexington, and he had gone to some AA meetings, and he got much the same idea, you know. But then they developed that to a point where they differed from us, and what I didn't like was that, of course, when I wrote to Danny, there was no group. There wasn't even a group except what they would get together and hold a group. There was nothing standard.
Yeah.
There was no ongoing group.
Uh-huh.
And then I lost the letter and the other information I got from Danny. And I was talking to a friend of mine one day, and I said, I'm going to have to write to him again. She says, I just wrote to him. I think I gave her his address, which she got it someplace. And she said, I just wrote to him, and I got a letter back from him.
Who was that wrote to her?
Danny Carlson.
No, I mean, who was the lady that wrote to her?
Dorothy Sullivan.
Oh, Dorothy.
Yeah, Dorothy, you remember. Dorothy. So she said, I'll give you the letter, you know. She said, I just wrote to him just because we had been talking, you know. She said, I wrote to him and to find out what he's doing. So I got the letter and the other stuff. I only had the letter left. You see what they did? They were looking for people to sponsor addicts, take care of them, to try to get them trained to get a job, to try to find a place for them to stay, to try to get them medical help, to try to get them education of any kind, you know, to educate them. And, you know, this is not the way that we look at things. See?
No.
They were more like the outreach program that we've got.
Yeah.
More in the line of the social activities, you see. And this is what they were trying to do up in New York, trying to set it up. And they were not anonymous. They would go on radio, you know.
Yeah.
They would go on radio at that time.
Now, that was from Lexington, they went up to New York?
Well, Danny was from New York.
Yeah.
I believe Danny was originally from New York.
So when he got out, he went to New York?
So, but Danny was very ill. He had cancer.
Oh, yeah. What did they call that?
They called it N.A.
Oh, N.A.
It was called N.A. That's where we got the name from. That's the only thing we got from him was the name. Because it made sense to me to use the name Narcotics Anonymous because most of the stuff people were using at that time were all downers in one form or another, from heroin on down, you know, or up, whichever way you want to look at it. There wasn't much coke going on at that time, you know. There wasn't much professional. There weren't too many professionals who were willing to admit they were addicts, as you know, in this country. They tried to take care of their own, and of course a lot of them didn't make it, as we know. You know, I know doctors that died, and nurses, many of them, many friends of mine died years ago. And they just couldn't make it. They couldn't get off the goddamn pills, you know. So, and I still say, you've heard me say it, still the biggest killer in the world is a combination of booze and pills. It'll kill more people than anyone ever thought of killing.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
You know that from your own stories.
Yeah.
You know? And, well, anyway, they would always get on my case. Well, you start. You get a place and we'll have a meeting. You know, I said, what the hell's the matter with you guys getting a meeting? You know? And I began to get to know a few more people. So I used to go downtown with Eddie. And, of course, I knew Cy from the group. But Cy used to make the statement something. Once in a while, you get up on the podium down at the group and say, oh, let these addicts and these other people find another place to go. AA is for alcoholics, and that's what it is. You know? So he was hard-nosed that way, but Cy was a hard-nosed, let's face it. And a lot like ourselves. He was going to do things his way, goddammit, you know, whether anybody liked it or not. And he wouldn't listen to anybody. At least we'd listen to sometimes we'd listen to each other, you know, or we'd listen to the program. And so I thought about it, and I thought, I ain't up to doing that. Gee, I'm not physically up to it, you know. I wasn't working 4 hours a day yet, you know. And half the time I couldn't get a job. There was only one guy would hire me at that time, as a matter of fact. I couldn't find a job.
You were painting then?
No, I was roofing.
Oh, roofing.
And that's hard work, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, we got along for a while. One Thursday night, at the end of, I think it was about the second or third month of 1953. I go down, and I'm making the coffee down there, as I usually did. I made coffee down there for years.
At the
Clubhouse, you know, that's where I met you.
Yeah.
I was making coffee, and I met you down there. That's the day I met you.
No, you were...
I was making coffee at that time for the clubhouse.
Oh, yeah.
When I met you.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't mean I was making coffee that day.
At that particular time, yeah.
But that was one of my
Because
jobs
Paul-
down there, was making coffee.
Oh, yeah. Because Paul called you. And
Yeah. Paul called me. He called me here at the house, and I said, hell, I'll come right down.
Yeah, and you know, when you come in, it was, I felt like I was being tested, you know, if I could be accepted or something. I said, geez, boy.
Well, he said to me,
this guy proves that I
Jimmy, I think I got a live one here, and I'm not quite sure how to handle it. Can you come down? I said, hell, yeah. I didn't know any more than he did about anything, you know. There's a little bit of, gave him a little bit of courage, and gave me a little bit of courage, too.
Yeah.
And when I saw you, I had that feeling that you were ready, you know. I don't think I had to say much of anything. In fact, I don't think I did say much of anything.
No,
I recall.
I think what you said is, okay, well, yeah, he can be part of our group or something,
Sure,
you know. It was like he gave you approval that I could join your
That's what you
group.
want, you know. Yeah, well, but see, that was one of the things I had to contend with. That I used to burn me. I used to stay away from groups sometimes. They'd look to me for approval, and I used to try to tell them, I ain't got nothing more to say than you have. You're a member of the group. You do your 12-step work. We'll do it together or whatever, you know. And you don't need my approval, goddammit. As long as you're living by the steps and living by the traditions, you don't need nobody's approval. I'm the same way yet, you know, and I still say the same thing. You don't need anybody's approval to do anything when it comes to helping yourself.
That's right.
And helping a newcomer.
Sure.
You do whatever you can to help them, you know. If all you can do is say, hello, how are you? Hang around, this is a good meeting place. Says, keep coming back, whatever.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. That's good enough.
That's right, like old Maury, you know.
Yeah.
Keep coming back.
Good enough.
Yeah.
So, so anyway, they're
February or
keeping
March,
on my
50,
goddamn...
53.
Yeah, they're keeping right on my goddamn ass, and I'm getting tired. So I'm making the coffee, and I turn around. Eddie and Gil walk in, Gil's wife, you know. I turn around, Pat Hand walks in with another guy from Burbank he used to hang around with. I turn around, and Jesse Lawyer and his brother Manuel walk in from the east side, you know. And the first thing you know...
Manuel Lawyer, is that the guy they call Pancho?
No, there's another one. There's another lawyer.
Yeah.
And so I look, and I think, shit, this is the opportunity, you know. So I finish my coffee, and I put the lid on, and I walk around, and I introduce them to each other. Some of them didn't know each other, you know. And Eddie knew most of them, but not all of them. He didn't know Pat Hand, didn't know the other guy. And Gil didn't know them, but Gil knew the lawyers, but didn't know the others. So I introduced them all around, you know. And finally, Gus said, come here, all get our heads together. So we stood right near by the fireplace, you know, got our heads together. I said, well, you son of a bitches, will you leave me alone and go start the goddamn meeting that you're talking about for addicts? You know, go do it. You know? So they jumped, you know. And so Gil says, well, I just rented a place over on, right near Van Nuys Boulevard. I got a great big living room. He said, we could have a meeting there.
That's
The rest of them said, why don't we have it? Will you come? I said, sure, I'll come, you know.
Was that right on the corner of San Fernando Road? And
Louver and San Fernando Road. I got it on tape.
yeah.
It's a dump site now. I mean, they have dump trucks go in and out of there now.
Oh, is that
Pick up
right?
trash, you know.
Yeah.
That's like their garage and their office.
Yeah. Because I went to school with his daughter right about that
did you? I
time,
didn't know
too.
that.
Yeah. And I'd been over to his house in
Well, remember
1952.
the big living room they had?
Big living room, and then he had his train tracks and everything set up in the garage.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right in the garage.
Yeah.
And then in the back was the bedroom. You know? And so...
I didn't know he was involved, but I knew the
So
kids
that
liked
Monday,
him a lot.
this was not N.A.
No.
This was not N.A. And they said to me, what should we call it? I said, I don't give a goddamn what you call it. The only name I know that might fit would be Narcotics Anonymous, because most of us are narcotic users, you know? And this makes sense to me, you know? And they said, yeah, sounds good, but...
So that was in February or so of February, March
52.
52.
So we go over the next Monday, and some of the other people, Maury showed up that night, and a couple of the other people showed up from AA to help, you know. So we go over there, the very first meeting, Gil gets up and announces that he was going to call it HFD. Now, HFD goes back further than that. He was not the one to start that. That went back to Betty and Larry Tom. I got acquainted with, this was another of some of the addicts I got acquainted with in the years that I started. They were around AA and had been there about a year or so before I was. I think at least Betty was, but I don't think Larry was. But That's beside the point. We were both on the program. And I got to know Betty because she told the story that she had been one of the addicts who came into AA, you know, and she said she never had any problem with drinking, you know. But she thought the program might help her, you know, the attitude that we have sometimes towards programs, you know. And about a year later, she decided, I think it was a party or New Year's or something, decided she could have a drink. Why not? And she said she was in worse shape at the end of 1 week on booze than she ever was on heroin.
Is that right? Yeah.
Really got color.
Quick.
That really just developed, right? Full blown. You know, she had been drinking a little beer and a little highball here and there.
But she always had
throughout
drugs.
the year and thinking she was on the program, you know. So she started what she called HFD, habit-forming drugs. And they had a little meeting in their apartment down in Santa Monica, but before you could get in the door of their meeting, you had to admit you were an alcoholic as well as an addict.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, most addicts were not going to do that. That's why in our little white book it says some people had tried other methods.
Oh, yeah.
See? That's where
that came from.
I love that stuff in that book. It's fundamental from what was happening and going on.
At that particular time.
And so Gil, I had told Gil now about Larry and Betty, and I had invited them to be my speaker on a Sunday night, my very first Sunday night meeting at the club that I ever led. I asked them to be my speakers. Well, after they spoke, nobody in the clubhouse would talk to me.
It was all drugs.
I had no right to bring these people into AA, so I learned very early what it meant to be rejected and put down, you know. And sometimes that, I guess, is the reason why I get hot under the collar when I see it happening to other people, you know. And there was no reason for it. These people were trying at that time to do a job, and then later on, of course, I met Doc Stewart a little bit later on, which is another part of the story.
David Stewart that wrote the book Thirst for Freedom?
Yeah, but then and he and I, we had so many things that we thought very much alike on, you know. And that's the reason we got along as well as we did.
Didn't his wife come to the program for a while?
She came down, if you remember. She used to come over for about 3 weeks, I think. She was down in town. She doesn't know how she got in town. But Dave used to tell her to try to find Narcotics Anonymous. And I shouldn't have put his name on there, but that's the way it is, you know. I bleeped that out. But anyway, this is more or less for our own...
That's right. It's not going to go anyplace anyway. No.
It's for our outlines. And so she came down, and she arrived here in L.A., and somewhere or another, she called me, I think, or I got a hold of her through somebody else. And we went over to Sherry's place in Hollywood, remember? Did you ever come over to that meeting on Cahuenga? Sandy's place. Remember Sandy, little Sandy?
No.
Maybe you don't remember Sandy.
No, I don't think so.
Well, or was that before? I can't remember just what year that was. But anyway, she's never used or drank since.
Is that right?
Every once in a while, she sends me a card up until the last couple of years.
They're up in Canada now?
No, they've split up for years.
Oh, yeah.
He's remarried. And I think he's up someplace in Santa Barbara again. I'm trying to find him. Bill from Las Vegas called me. He moved down to Santa Barbara, and he's looking for him, too. So I told him to try the state hospital up there, that maybe he went back to work at the state hospital. That's where I first knew him. I used to go up to Santa Barbara and see him. And so anyway, then what happened was that we started that, Gil got up and said this was going to be an HFD group, you know. Well, I figured, oh, shit, here we go again, you know. This domineering, you're going to do it this way, you're going to do it that way, a hot seat type of group, you know. And this is, of course, long before Synanon, but that's the type of things that were germinating at the time. So, well, I'll go along for a while and see what the hell happens, you know, I'll go. So we get home, and there's another girl who had gone to that meeting, and she called me up right after that. And she had been another one who had not been at the clubhouse that night with her husband. She was not a member of AA. She was strictly a pillhead, never drank. She was not a drinker. He was on the program, and so she calls me up, and she was so hot. Oh, that's like to burn up the wires in the kitchen. She was so hot. She was like, who the hell do they think they are? We're talking about trying. She said, you and I have talked so much about trying to get a group going to help addicts, and they come up with this stuff again. And, you know, that ain't working. People won't go down there to those other meetings. She said, I'm not going to go in there and admit that I'm an alcoholic. Well, I try to talk to her like we talk to people. Alcohol is just another goddamn drug. You haven't used every drug in the market, have you? She said, no. So you haven't used that alcohol. You're going to go on an experiment with I know, but I ain't going to admit I'm an alcoholic, you know. So she was another hard-head, you know. So I said, well, I don't know what the hell we're going to do then. I said, I'm getting sick and tired of all this crap already, you know. Everybody wants to be a big shot, you know. And I said, that ain't why I'm here. I said, I learned that very quickly. I learned that from Laurie. So let the big shots go up and do all the talking. If you're called on and you feel like doing it, yeah, go do it. And he said, if you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. That's the way it is. And I'm glad that Laurie told me. That's where I learned that. You don't have to say yes all the time.
That's right, yeah.
Okay? You got to take care of your number one.
Funny how those little things are so important.
So that was very important for me, especially after I had gotten acquainted with Cy and saw the way Cy was going his ego. And Laurie used to tell me, he says, Cy's a sick man. And, he's a good man. He works. He's a hard worker. You know? But so anyway, she called me up again and again and again. And finally she said, we just got to get something going, sir. You know, I'm not going to go back to that meeting, and I need some kind of group, you know. I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me talk to a few people, see if they'd be willing to sit down with us and try to get something going, you know. So I went to quite a number of people. I'm not going to enumerate all their names. But all I got from them was no, 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 all the way down the line. Some of the people that you and I know well, and I've known well, and still know well today. No, 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 no. I told them some of the things that she and I had talked over. I said, we've got to, fundamentally, we've got to do it right from the start. We've got to. I've learned this in AOA. If you don't live by the traditions, you're not going to make it. I don't care what kind of group it is. If you don't have traditions to guide you, you're not going to make it, you know. And she said, well, I don't know nothing about traditions, you know. She said, all I want to do is get a group where I can go and where heights like I can go and get some help. All right. Okay, so I called a lot of people, and all I got to say was no. And finally I got down to a couple of people that said, yeah, they'd come. Pat said he'd come. Well, Paul said he'd come.
Paul Rosenbluth?
Yeah. Tommy said, I'm going to do whatever I can, but I don't want to get into the group, you know. It's okay, Frank, that's all right.
Who was that?
Frank Carnahan.
Oh.
I said, Frank, that's okay. You can give us whatever, you know, maybe help us get rolling, you know. So the very first meeting around there, oh, God, it was a riot. Everybody was fighting with each other. Shit, you know. Within 2 weeks, we had, I think we only had 1 or 2 people left of the original group, you know.
When was this about?
This was around the end of June or the beginning of July in 1953.
Oh, yeah.
And so I replaced them with somebody else, replaced some of them with alcoholics who were unwilling, but thought, well, I'll try. One guy in particular who came for 2 meetings and finally quit, turned out about 7 or 8 years later after we had died out and came back again, he showed up at a meeting one night. He had gotten on the pills, and he was a full-fledged addict by then, see?
Yeah.
So you see, you can never tell how things happen.
That's right. So did you call Narcotics Anonymous?
Yeah, we couldn't keep a group together hardly. But as each one came in, we got a little further. We got a little bit more stuff on paper, like you see in that sheet that we have, you know, from the early days.
Yeah.
The minutes, you know. And then we finally got it set up. So, okay. So we got the hall.
What hall was that?
That's the Dad's Hall.
The Dad's Hall.
Church, you know.
Over in
the hall.
Where was that?
Sun Valley.
In Sun Valley.
Sun Valley, up on Arminta. And not Arminta, I make that mistake all the time. God damn. I make that mistake. I've had that in my mind so much
For years.
I cannot knock it out. You know?
Isn't that something?
Cantara is the name of the street.
Cantara. Is that the Dad's Club still there?
No. That's a Spanish church now. I have all this on tape. I've got all this on videotape.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a lot more to do, but I'm going out taking places that are still standing.
You're putting that on video.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat, Jimmy.
See, that's what I'm really working on.
Yeah.
Later on, maybe I can get it cleaned up and get it in tape, and maybe I can sell and make a couple of bucks to help me get along too, like everybody else is doing.
Darn right.
Why not? You know.
Yeah.
And especially the early days. So anyway, what happens is we got enough people. We got 4 people that were willing to stick together long enough, you know. So as it says in that the minutes, you know, they elected me the first chairman, you know. The first thing I said to him was, you've got to have a name for this thing. So is there any suggestions? So different ones brought up different. Well, nobody wanted to talk. I said, well, I've suggested Narcotics Anonymous. That's what I've been talking about for a while. It's an anonymous program, and that tells people we're anonymous. It lets them know that they don't have to worry. That's the main reason I want this, you know. Or I said we could call it Nar-Anon, which would be the same thing, Narcotics Anonymous, you know, or we could call it Narcanon. And I'm sorry I didn't tie up all those names years ago, but I didn't know how to do that in those days. Because then Narcanon wouldn't have been able to use that name.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, Naranon I suggested to Alma when she and I sat down together to talk about forming the group. She said, what should we call it? I said, I told her what I'm telling you. We had 5 different names that we chose. One was Narco. We threw that out right away. No, then Narcanon, Naranon, and she said, I like the sound of that, Naranon, non-addict, you know. Narcotics Anonymous is good for you guys, and non, we are not addicts, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so it sounds like Al-Anon, you know. And so that's where that came from, that name. So anyway, they finally said, no, they don't like any of them. And what they're going to do is they're going to call it NAAA or AANA, one or the other. So you can't do that.
We'll call it both combination,
You cannot do that, you know. Well, that's what we're going to do. So the very first thing I suggested, they knocked me down, right?
Yeah.
They didn't want it. They voted me down. So I said, well, okay, in that case, then I suggest that you, since you're the secretary, you've been made secretary of a group that you call New York, and talk to somebody in AA in New York, and you ask them point blank if you can do that.
Yeah.
The next week she did. When they came back the next week,
No way.
some more, she said, no, we can't use that. I said, I told you, you know, but that's all right. The second thing I suggested, I can't remember what the hell it was right offhand now. I suggested something else anyway, and they voted me down too on that. So we were off to a good start, you know. That's about what we've been ever since.
Sure.
And but then eventually we got it together, and there was a couple of other people fell off, but these 4 stuck pretty well, up to the point where we were all ready to have the first meeting. All right, we had the first meeting, and you know, there's a list of the people who came there. About half of them were alcoholics, and the other half, some of them never came back, but some of them have come back since, you know, as full-fledged addicts.
Yeah.
So that's about what the story was. But it was a hit and miss, touch and go situation all the time, you know. I got a speaker for Gilda that I knew in AA, because that was the only source we had for people with any time, you know.
Sure.
Who was an addict, and at the last minute, and this is the important part of the story, at the last minute he called me up and he said, Jimmy, I just got a call. I've got to go to New York.
Who was this?
I'm trying to remember his name. He eventually married one of the girls who was at the first meeting. Remember the Panger sister and Joanne?
Buddy Panzer?
He eventually married Joanne. His name was...
Yeah, I went to high school with them.
Yeah, what the hell was his name? Shit, I can't remember his name. He's a movie actor, stage. Stage. He was out here. He was friend size too. His name seems to be coming through his head. It'll come to me, but I can't recall it right now. He said, I got to go to New York and open in a play on Broadway, off Broadway. And he said, I can't turn it down. And he said, I got to leave now. He says, I won't be able to make it Monday night. Now this was like Thursday night.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, okay. You know,
So the meetings were started on a Monday night.
Monday night. I said, okay. I said, I'll see if I can get something else. So I got thinking, who the hell else could I go to? So I knew Cy's attitude, you know, and I thought, well, shit. Cy takes his wife on Friday nights over to the women's meeting. He takes Ozzy over there on Friday night. And then he generally waits around, you know, outside until the meeting's over. So I figured I'd go over and talk to Cy. So I go over, and sure enough, he drops his wife off, and I said, Cy, can I talk to you? He said, sure. And we started talking. I tell him what's going on. And he's one of the guys who turned me down. I asked him if he wanted to be on the board. You know?
Oh, yeah.
No way. No, let them find their own way. You know, let them find their own way. And he said, in a way, I'm glad now. This is why I have such adamant attitudes in separating the two fellowships. That's why I'm so strong, I think, because I've seen some of the things that have happened. You know?
Yeah.
And so I finally, I didn't know what the hell else to say. I just kept saying, no, I can't. I don't want to go and talk to those people. No, I'm not. I'm a medical addict. You know, I got hurt in the service, and I got into the pills through the Veterans Administration. You know, and I'm not a street addict or anything like that. You know, although he changed the story so many times later on. And I'm not saying this because I have it in black and white.
Yeah.
You know, I listened to radio one time about a year after this, and I listened to him on the radio in the morning where he broke his anonymity and said he founded NA. You know. I listened to him.
Oh,
I'm sorry
right?
I'm sorry I don't have a tape. and I tackled him about it, so it just got carried away. Oh, he really got carried away.
Yeah.
And not that it was that important, but the fact that you come out and give your name on radio in the morning, and he'd been around the program a couple of years longer than I had in AA.
Yeah,
And he knew,
the traditions.
But, some of them, that's why I'm so careful if I go on radio or anything public like that, I don't give a goddamn who knows me, as long as I don't break the traditions. If I break them accidentally, okay, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, brings me to another thing about accidentally breaking your anonymity. I'm going to have to look through a lot of my old tapes to see if I can find the one where Mary Jane and Gene broke their anonymity. If you remember, it was on that show. Remember all the hell broke loose one time?
Oh, on the radio program? That's right.
On a TV program.
Oh, it's TV?
And just lucky, I had my tape on. I was going to tape another guy who was supposed to be on that show, and they came on, and I had the tape on.
You didn't even realize it was on there. That's right, I remember.
So they called me.